Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Cutter Degrassism. And this one is not buoyed by a Reddit post or of my doing or anyone else's doing. It's buoyed by the fact that I have had done such a great job with Degrassi stuff over the past 6 years that there's one thing I have not talked about. You may be thinking, come on, you've handled all the major topics in Degrassi history. You did Cutter Degrassi Unpopular Opinions. Your time stands still, retrospectives, oversharing your stuff, doing your big gripes and everything. You've done several top 10 videos. You've done deep dives. You've had reaction videos to someone actually talking about your unhinged Degrassi opinions, Sierra. And I'm so sorry I misspelled your name, like frig. But the fact of the matter is, there's one part of Degrassi that I have never mentioned or talked about. Maybe in passing, but not really much. I sometimes talk about Degrassi Junior High and High. I talk about clothes, you know what. I talk about, schools out. And I think I had an unpopular opinion that someone thinks that Snake was like woke in that thing. And I basically said, no, Snake did what he had to do. I also talk about, Degrassi Next Gen and all that. Like, how did we get to Degrassi Next Gen? And it was basically buoyed by a CBC show called Vision in 1999 when they reunited the Degrassi High cast. And then, CBC almost had the reboot, but CTV swooped in because CTV had the budget and all that. CBC was, of course, limited by the government. Of course, I talk about, how annoying Emma was seasons 1 to 3. I mean, but, you know, terribly. Season 2, well, I talk about the Rick and Terry situation. Obviously, got to talk about Time Stand Still, season 4. I talk about how certain people should be blamed more for their role in the Rick situation, mostly Rick's parents, the school board, and Raj, for that matter. Talked about, Emma in season 5. She wanted Peter because of Sean, because she wanted Sean badly, but settled on Peter and all that, and it showed how desperate she was in a sense. I mean, once Sean came back in season 6, I think she wanted to go after Sean again. Season 6, of course, speaking of Emma, about how her role in If You Leave actually was just a cry for help, and she didn't want to lose Manny because she felt like she was going to lose Manny and tried to cling on to Manny, and of course pissed everyone off. And then season 7 about, no, I didn't talk about the perfect finale. They should have been finale. That will probably be the next one. I'll probably put that out on Christmas Eve. Or no, actually no, I have a better idea. Anyhow, you get the gist. Degrassi Junior High, and then Degrassi Next Gen, and then I don't talk a lot about Degrassi from season 8 to 14 because that's kind of the area I skip in. But in the next class, I do barely anything. But it's a stupid 3.5 minute introduction. But do you notice something's missing? Do you notice something really is missing of what I talked about? What if I told you there was a Degrassi show that I have not talked about in anything, or at least as much as I know? Well, no, it's not that HBO series that was supposed to come out in 2022 and make all Degrassi heads salivate. No, it's not that. It's the fact that Degrassi actually didn't start with Degrassi Junior High and High. We're thinking, that's impossible. CBC started that in 1985, or 86, I mean. Nope. People forget, and I don't blame you if you forget, that Degrassi actually started as a one-off special in 1979. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Degrassi was once a couple of one-off specials and then turned into a series and then went down the path. Because CBC did a Degrassi series called Kids of Degrassi Street. And of course, and as I said, I don't blame you for not remembering or knowing about Kids of Degrassi Street. I mean, it was 46 years ago. So here's the skinny on the Kids of Degrassi Street. As Wikipedia says, The Kids of Degrassi Street is a Canadian TV series created by Kid Hood and Linda Schleier. The first entry in the Degrassi franchise and the only one to focus on children instead of teenagers. There was a group of children living on Degrassi Street in Toronto. And yes, Degrassi Street in Toronto is a actual street. It's a side street. It was named after an Italian-born soldier who immigrated to Canada in 1831. So, of course, that's the drama TV franchise Degrassi and all that. Yeah, it's good old Degrassi and all that. Eastdale Collegiate Institute is where Degrassi is and all that. And of course, it was set in stone. Anyway, the series originated as a collection of annual standalone short films that started with Ida Makes a Movie in 1979. In 1982, CBC made it a full series. It would actually have several actors who would later be in Degrassi Junior High and High, playing different characters. So how this started was that Linda Schleier, a 7th and 8th grade teacher at Earl Grey Senior Public School in Toronto, formed a company with Kid Hood called Playing with Time in 1976. She actually taught her students an early version of media studies, which included filmmaking with Super 8 film. Remember that, people? I don't think so. Discovering that there were a lack of resources, a librarian ordered several books about filmmaking, although one was a picture book called Ida Makes a Movie, in which, the titular character was a cat. Nobody was aware that Ida Makes a Movie was for preschoolers. Anyhow, Linda thought the story was powerful and wanted to make it live action adaptation featuring children instead of cats. So she flew to New York, made a $200 deal in 1979 money, that's decent, to adapt the book into a movie. Yam Moore became a writer for the series. So the series was set in Toronto, opening sequence of music. The opening sequence has a short piano piece set to black and white stills of the Leslieville neighborhood. So yeah, anyhow. The Kids at Degrassi Street featured many actors who would later appear on Degrassi Junior High and High, with 5 key actors. Stacey Mistician, who was Lisa on the show, and then turned into Caitlin, the activist, and Joey's love interest. Neil Hope, who was a guy named Griff, who was a street punk from another neighborhood until he moved to the Grassy area. He turned into Wheels, the troubled teenager. And as Granovsky, who was she? She was Karen, and then turned into Lucy Fernandez on Degrassi Junior High and High. Lucy, the strong, powerful black character, one of the best characters around. I did a deep dive on her years ago. Sarah Charlesworth, who was Casey, a pretty good character who was African American, who was one of the best characters, and then turned into Susie on Degrassi Junior High, who almost was taken advantage of by, who was that teacher? Lizzie was, I don't know. Anyway, and John Ionu, who was Pete on the show, and he turned into Alex Yanku on Degrassi Junior High and High. So the first main character was Ida, played by Zoe Newman, who was pretty impressive in the first 5 episodes of the series. So Ida was the main person for Ida Makes a Movie, and then Dawn Harrison, the cute Dawn Harrison, as Cookie Peters. Well, Catherine, but her name was Cookie Peters. She was a scene stealer and all that. Ida's brother Fred was played by Alan Manussi. Peter Duckworth Pilkington, what a name, played Noel Kennard, who was this chubby kid who actually made some things happen. Stacy Mistitian, as I said, Nick Goddard as Chuck. Can remember Chuck's role and everything. Sarah Charlesworth as Casey, who was a pretty good character in her own way, strong and confident and all that, and would be Lisa's major best friend forever, as it seemed. John Iron as Pete. J.B. Summerfield as Martin Schlegel, the kid who had what 4 or 5 siblings and all that. His father worked for the front desk for the police, and he had to have hearing aids and all that. Tyson Talbot as Billy, who was a, who was the older brother of Benjamin, played by Christopher Charlesworth, who actually appeared as Scooter on Degrassi Junior High and High. Tyson Talbot was the strong, confident black character as well. Unfortunately, Tyson Talbot went to jail for the rest of his life because he had murdered somebody. Genevieve Evelton as Liz, Rachel Blanchard as Melanie Schlegel, Martin's sister. Neil Hope as Griff, who appeared in the later episodes. Dana Jean Brown as Connie, who was good with math and all that, I believe. She was actually Trish on Degrassy Junior High. You remember the Junior High and High? Do you remember the girl with the mohawk? That was Trish, and that was Dana Brown. Arlene Lott as Rachel Hewitt, who actually was Nancy on Degrassi Junior High and High. Matthew Roberts as Jeffrey, and Inez as Karen. So the first episode was released on September 12th, 1979. It was called Ida Makes a Movie. Ida and Cookie walk through a park and see lots of litter and all that. And when Ida sees a picture for a movie competition, she decides to try to make a movie and all that. So she enlists her brother Fred and her best friend Cookie in the film to try to promote garbage and all that. It's kind of awesome and all that, but and it was cool because Fred was wearing his Toronto Blue Jays T-shirt, and of course the Blue Jays in the late 70s were just an expansion team, if you will. Ida actually wins first prize in the competition, but they all think that her movie was about war, not on garbage. So Ida doesn't know what to do, and Ida practically decides to own up to it, saying that it was full of garbage and not war, and gives back the award. However, the award committee gives her the award still, saying that Ida did the right thing by telling the truth. Little did we know that it would start a revolution. So, September 1st, 1980, another standalone movie before the start of school, if you will, is Cookie Goes to the Hospital. Cookie ends up being sick and turning white as a ghost, so she goes to the hospital, and it's kind of cute seeing her in the hospital, and with the nurse talking to her about, her name being Catherine. What do people call you? Katie? Kathy? What? Cookie. Why do they call you Cookie? She shrugs. Probably because you're so sweet. Anyway, yeah, Cookie is always seen with her doll, but her doll is missing. Ida and Noel tried to give the doll back to Cookie, but unfortunately, they don't allow children under the age of 10 to visit the hospital, visit the emergency ward. So they managed to get the doll to her, and Cookie feels a lot better. Irene moves in, is that Ida is a little suspicious of this girl named Irene, who comes to live on Degrassi Street, and it has representation because of an Asian family. Ida thinks that Irene is too friendly with Cookie. But basically, Ida, Cookie, and Irene do investigate some stuff. So that was September 1st, 1981. And then in 1982, CBC said, you know what? We're going to run more episodes and all that. This could work. So the fourth episode was May 1982, May 30th of 1982. That date actually has some semblance in the sports community. I know this is a Degrassi video, but if I remember right, May 30th of 1982. That was the episode. That was the day that Cal Ripken actually started his famous streak of 2,130. No, sorry, 2,632 consecutive games, and that was May 30th, 1982, against the Blue Jays, of all things. So anyway, Noel is this chubby kid, but he has to buy a suit because Noel's dad is going to get married again. And to add the fact that Noel's dad's fiance is ruining everything and changing the house around, and she does not like Noel's checked suit. However, Gail, I think, says that she'll give a little if Noel gives a little. And then December 13th, 1982 was when they started kind of 4 straight weeks of new Degrassi episodes. First one's Lisa makes the headlines. Lisa wants to work well on her thing. And of course, that was, I believe, that was the first episode Lisa, aka Stacy Petition, was in. Then Sophie Minds the Store is that Sophie gets Chuck to help her out at her current store. But the cash is out by $20 at the end of the day. And she accuses Chuck because Chuck's father is in jail. However, Sophie realizes that she made an error in judgment and apologizes to Chuck. Anyway, they have a survey line called Casey Draws the Line, December 27th, when Casey and Lisa, who are really best friends, there's a new survey line, but it goes through the pen of the rabbit that they share, so they don't know who's going to get the rights to the rabbit. Pete takes a chance. Good old Pete. He's Chuck's little brother, John Ianu. He takes his chance. Takes a chance on some investments, but people don't like it. So then, after that, the next Degrassi episode was September 1983 with Chuck Makes a Choice. Chuck tells his girlfriend Tina that his dad's a pilot. But of course, he's hiding the fact that his dad has just come out of jail and is in a halfway house. But Pete insists on inviting their dad to the school play, which is Robin Hood. Chuck isn't sure how Tina was going to handle the fact that Chuck's dad has been in jail. But, it all works out in the end, thankfully enough. And then no Degrassi until November 1984. So that was the 10th episode was, well, when they really went weekly series and did the title card and all that. So CBC put it on the air. Billy breaks the chain. Billy breaks the chain. He doesn't want to answer the bad luck chain letter. Things started happening to him. Yeah, he's a goalie and all that. At a time where, goalies were usually white, Billy was black and all that. But I mean, he could have inspiration for Grant Fuhr. And then there was Catherine finds her ballads. Finally, we actually find out more about Cookie because Cookie was the first 3 episodes and then she disappeared. So in episode number 11, she's back. But Cookie has her parents being divorced. Both of them want to come and watch her at a gymnastics meet. She's trying to make sure that they both don't see each other because, it could cause trouble and all that. I mean, and Cookie's mother in the episode was Alana Miles. Remember her, Canadians? Black Velvet. Yep, that one. No, that was the big one. And then the next week was Benjamin Walks the Dog. Billy and Pete want to do grown-up things without Benjamin, who is a pest to Billy. They get rid of him, but the fact is that Billy has guilt because they might have gotten rid of him forever. And then episode 13 was Liz Sits the Schlegels. She takes a babysitting job with 2 lively kids and one who refuses to have anything to do with her. I guess it was only 3 kids. I thought there was more than 3. You know how it is with Liz and all that. But yeah, the Schlegels, Martin, who doesn't like to do much with Liz. Martin actually has a secret obsession with like knitting things because he knows his mother is going to have another kid. And then episode 14 was the Canards move out. It's when Lisa doesn't want to leave Degrassi and move to Vancouver, but no one will listen to her feelings on the subject. However, Lisa is her feelings are so strong she's having trouble listening to anyone else's talking and all that. So basically, this is kind of awkward because it feels that when Degrassi Junior High came out and Petition got Caitlin, this was Caitlin to a T. That Caitlin is so strong about her opinions that she doesn't listen to anyone else. Of course, the Degrassi Next Gen people know damn well who this is, and that is Emma to a T. I kind of agree. But Lisa goes to Vancouver and realizes everything. And then the next episode after a Christmas break was January 4th, 1985, when Martin meets the pirates. Martin hates the pirates because the pirates from Bolton Avenue, another street group, want him as area lieutenant for the expansion to Degrassi Street, the toughest gang around. But Martin doesn't think that's a good move. And that's when we see Griff for the first time. And then Connie goes to court is when Connie returns $5 Casey dropped on the floor. Casey thinks that Connie is contributing her share of present for their teacher. Connie doesn't know what to deal with. She will be collecting for her paper route on Wednesday, but then the paper goes on strike. And then Griff makes a date. Everyone hates Griff because he's part of the pirate gang and all that. He used to be. He wants to meet Lisa, and Lisa's back from Vancouver. There is a reason why, and all of that. And that will be. Where is it here? What episode was it that we find out for the first time? I think it was Lisa gets the picture or something like that. But yeah, Lisa comes back to Degrassi from Vancouver. Well, her baby brother is in Toronto for a major reason. We'll talk about that later. And then the next episode, Samantha gets a visitor, is when Samantha is there. It's out in the country, but Lisa comes to arrive for the weekend. Yes, that Lisa. Yes, that's Stacey Petition. So Samantha wants to make good with Lisa and all that. It's pretty cool. I don't know where it was. Where was it? Milton. They filmed the episode, but I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, that Lisa. And then the next episode was Rachel runs for office when she was keen to be her school's representative to the new City Hall Youth Council. But she has to fight with Billy for the role, as Billy can breakdance and Pete can campaign for Billy. And then Jeffrey finds a friend, this tall, I think he was redheaded, I think. Anyway, supposed to be the smartest kids in class. And is mortified when Connie, who claims she never studies, beats him in a math test. But Jeffrey and Connie find common things. So that season was 11 episodes. And then the next season started on December 1st, 1985, when it's called Connie Makes a Catch, because Connie has her eye on Candy, the captain of the baseball team. And anyway, Connie is a tomboy in a sense. Karen keeps her word. What's the next episode? December 8th. The yearbook is in desperate financial straits at school. Karen is not interested in the yearbook's problems. Anyway, she's found roller skates and all that. Can't remember that episode. Ryan runs for help December 15th. Ryan's always making up stories, but Benjamin thinks Ryan is telling the truth and all of that. And Benjamin actually sneaks out to a construction site to investigate with Ryan and falls down a hole and cannot get out. So of course Ryan has to run for help. They actually did a what they call a safety video, kind of in between kids at Degrassi Street and Degrassi Junior High, which some former kids at Degrassi Street were in, that had the same thing, that people wandered on a construction site and then all of a sudden, they have to run for help. Martin hears the music, December 22nd, 1985. Martin actually is horrified to discover he has to wear a hearing aid, and these are 1980s style hearing aids and all that. Oh my gosh, this episode is almost 40 years to the date that I'm doing this. So anyway, yeah, hearing aid, the mechanical one and all that. Everyone acts so weird about him. I mean, Pete and Billy treat him, they try to treat him well, but it comes off a little offish, I feel in my mind. And that Rachel is upset with Martin, calls him some kind of name and all that. And Martin runs off, decides to try to do things without his hearing aid. Whereas Rachel is having stress over the talent show. She's not eating right. She does talk to Martin's mom, who is a counselor, and all that. And Rachel finds out that Rachel is barely eating at all. But Martin finds out he had to do something. And ironically, Rachel sings a song that Martin actually penned. Lisa gets the picture. This is the episode that we hear things going. Lisa sees her chance to spend time with Griff, where Casey comes up with a brilliant plan. Griff can project caricatures of everyone, the yearbook pictures. We then meet Danny, the crossing guard, who is a mentally deficient adult, if you can call it that. Obviously, you know that if you know me personally, I hate saying the certain word. So anyway, Griff doesn't do well with Danny, the crossing guard. But then Lisa finds out that her baby brother could also be mentally deficient, if you will, and that they will have to do everything they can. Of course, things in the 80s, people with, arcation, if you will, are a lot different 40 years ago. So anyway, Lisa writes a report about her baby brother, Nicholas, having that condition, and Griff reconsiders his position and apologizes to Danny. And then the final episode of Kids of the Degrassi Street was called Griff Gets a Hand on January 5th, 1986. Griff is having trouble with schoolwork. He'd rather be drawing pictures than studying, and he's almost about to fail grade 6 and go into junior high. So anyway, he'd rather be drawing pictures, and then he actually makes Danny his friend, the crossing guard, but Griff makes it a good caricature, but he never finishes it. And then Danny dies of his stroke. They dedicate the yearbook to Danny, but Griff is struggling with the fact that he didn't do the caricature on time. But, Lisa helps him out in it. Griff passes grade 6, and everything seems to be well and truly true. All that. So, yeah. So, once Degrassi Junior High was ready to be made and all that, CBC put the show Sundays at 5 until it was replaced by its successor in the same time slot. And all that. They did some illustrated paperback books in 1986 based on that. The complete series was released on DVD in July 2007. So, of course, Sundays at 5 o'clock, and of course, Mr. Radich himself at a convention said that they were lucky at 5 o'clock because Fresh Prince, when it came on, that was when CBC had it at 5 o'clock, and that we would be competing against left-handed lipstick lesbian curling. His words, not mine. But yeah, Sundays at 5. It makes sense because you don't want to put it. You could have put it on prime time, like at 7:30 on a certain day. I think it was on Mondays on CBC, like Degrassi Junior High. So that's kind of where we have everything then. So the Kids of Degrassi Street happened, and Degrassi Junior High was produced, and as they say, the rest is history. So thanks for watching this Kids of Degrassi Street video, my first attempt at Kids of Degrassi Street after so many Degrassi videos on other topics. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.